in the lockdown. So what I was hoping to do, I have been attending few of the seminars or rather webinars that have been organized by the team. But it's also really what I thought I could share today was more of how we are getting the uncertainties, but also with certain frameworks that we have been putting together for our clients. So you would hear a lot of these words from me, especially in this presentation. But before I go into the depths of it, let me uh, understand my context and let me explain how I plan to structure this.
Sandeep, one sec, your voice
Sure.
is sometimes echoing. Can you use a earphone or something, earplug?
Sure. Give me a minute.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Is this better now?
Yeah, this is better. Yeah.
Okay. So how I have structured this discussion today is I have split the whole thing into 4 parts, starting with what's the context, what are the concepts that we need to know if we are to talk about Agile, and also then moving on to how do you construct an Agile mindset into the team, into the mindset. And then the last part is how do you continue applying those learnings going forward. And before we go there, a brief introduction of where I'm coming from. So currently I am working as a manager in the technology consulting team of PwC in the Philippines. We are a team of around 200 people here and about 90 years old existence in the Philippines. What I primarily help or what I primarily engage with are areas of portfolio and program management, some change management, especially for technology programs, and then applying Agile and some technology tools like DevOps or methodologies like DevOps. Before moving to AIM for my MBA, I was running a restaurant for about 8 years. So I was a chef, I was the bartender for some time. We used to run a facility management business back in Nagpur, where I belong to. And before that, I was an applications engineer or a software developer at Oracle in Hyderabad. So that has been what I have been doing outside AIM. On the right, what you see is what I was doing while I was at AIM. So pretty much that sums up the whole slide that the plan that I have for us here. Now, moving, are there any specific areas that anyone would like me to cover? Any thoughts? Have you guys heard of Agile before?
No, Sandeep, the flow of the thing is you go with your presentation, 40 minutes and 20 minutes question and answer. There is no interaction in between. So you just go.
All right.
If you finish in 30, nothing like it. Okay,
whatever. All right, sure.
40 is so the outer limit.
I'll plan to, or rather I plan to finish it in about 30 minutes and then we can have a broader discussion around it or a more free-flowing discussion around it. Okay. So moving in, basically what is it that I want to drive through this discussion that we have? Okay. So as I mentioned, I have planned the discussion around 4 C's. So the context of why we are here, why is this important, why I think it is important now. The concept of Agile itself, the construct or how do you build that Agile mindset, and finally the continuation part on how do you take it forward from where we are right now. Okay, so what I would like to focus on, while there is a lot of talk that has happened around Agile, I wanted to really emphasize on what's the Agile manifesto. The Agile manifesto consists of 4 values that defines whether a team is agile or not. Okay, not all the values are, I would say, equally applied in all the situations, but to a large extent, everything should have some vetoes.
Sandeep, sorry, people are saying your voice is too low, man. I don't know.
Is this better now?
I think this is better. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay. So let me put it up like this. Okay. So what I try to do is, let's focus on the manifesto, and then there are a lot of discussions that can happen based on the values that we see in the manifesto, and then take it up from there. Before getting into the whole agile philosophy, there are basically two things that I would like to highlight. Okay, one is, you use these or you hear these words very interchangeably, but what I have seen, or what I the way I use it is really, there is agile methodology, which is a way of doing things. Okay, and then there is a certain framework in which you can apply those methodologies. Okay, so I'm trying to distill the two facts, two concepts. One is a methodology, which is typically the ways of working, and then there is a framework which will enable the flow of work in a way that is more seamless and that is more effective in that regard. So that's how, so we'll talk about agile methodology. There are different frameworks that you see on the screen, right? There is Scrum, there is Kanban, there is XP, and a lot of it. So all of those are frameworks which enable an agile methodology. Okay. With that, let's start to get into the context of why I think this is really important at this point. Okay. Uh, we have all heard VUCA a lot, right from the days it was coined by Harvard in 1987. It's a leadership philosophy. Uh, if you have been through AIM, I mean, all of us have been through AIM here, and I'm sure we have heard this so many times that it has really been ingrained in our brains that anything we do, we start thinking of VUCA, or and especially in the kind of context that we are in today, the pandemic, the lockdowns, the global chaos that is there, it has brought in a lot of volatility. We are seeing how crude oil is fluctuating in the prices. We are seeing how sensitive certain people have become. There is a lot of uncertainty. We don't know whether we'll go back to work tomorrow. There are a lot of people who don't know whether they'll have jobs at the end of this whole thing. Similarly, there is a immense complexity in how the world is really reacting to agile. The whole pandemic, and that all brings in a lot of ambiguity also in how do we see people responding to that. But to really take the core of it, or to go to the impact that has hit all of us as managers, or all of us as leaders, is that it has reduced the time that you have as leaders to go from an idea to a value. Okay. And when I say, from a marketing point of view, this is a very standard statement to make, that we need a faster time to market, we need this, we need that. But what I tried to do was go one step further down the road and say that we are not just hitting the market, but we are also required to hit the value that the product that we have envisaged, I mean, for the product that we have envisaged. And of course, if you don't have, though, if the customers don't see the value, I'm sure they won't buy the product as well, right? So with that whole context, that right now everything is about delivering value faster, delivering value in the most efficient way, and in a more effective channel, if I may say that. That's where agile becomes a lot more important. And why, that is something that we will see as we go through the whole discussion. Okay. uh, so with that context set, what I would like to dig into are the different concepts that we may come across as we talk about agile. Okay, this is not the complete laundry list. This is the most commonly heard words, or the glossary of agile philosophy. So we'll not have too much of theory around it, but then, so this is something that we have all been hearing. Okay, so first of all, let's start with understanding what are the user stories. This is something that primarily comes from an IT development or a software development lifecycle point of view, but to put it simply, it's really a set of requirements that one may have for whatever project you are doing. It could be a construction project, it could be uh, an IT project, it could be a simple paper that you are writing or a essay that you are writing. What are my requirements? And then those requirements are uh, drafted in a way in the agile context that it becomes easier for everybody to execute on them. And the best way or the easiest way to remember it is each user story has a construct to it, meaning that the way you should write each user story is that you should put yourself as a user. uh, so okay, me as the me as, let's take an example of an accountant, let's say. So me as an accountant should be able to create a new voucher in my system. So that's a user story itself. Now we build on each of this. Let's say this is one feature that you need to create a voucher. Then the sub feature can be, I need to be able to select my approver. I need to be able to select a date. I need to be able to select a cost center. So all of those are requirements or user stories that we have at a very high level or a very a generic level. And then you can go about developing them in more detail as you go. Okay. Now, who defines these user stories? It's the product owner. So in an agile team, typically you would have a product owner who would come up with all the requirements. So in a normal in a non-IT project, it could be, let's say, you know, the main contractor. Let's say in case of a construction project, the main contractor will bring in an architect, will bring in uh, a mason, will bring in a carpenter, and start putting in what are the requirements from the client and translating them into the language that those respective people would understand. Okay. So the product owner becomes the key or becomes the uh, one of the main roles, because he's the one or she's the one who decides what that product will look like. Sometime if you're hitting a deadline, if you're not being able to hit a deadline, then again it's the product owner who decides which feature to shelve for the moment. Okay, and then that can be brought in the next release. So those are the, I mean, those are the different roles that are there, or that's one of the major roles that is there for a agile team. The next is sprint. Now sprint is basically a collection of features or a collection of tasks that need to be done as a part of the project. So a sprint can say that, okay, my first sprint is to construct a single room with a complete electrical fitting, plumbing, furnishing, everything. So each item in the sprint is called as a backlog, and that backlog completion will drive you through a sprint completion. Typically in agile applied to a software development, a sprint lasts from around 2 weeks to 4 weeks. That's how it is structured. So the philosophy is that whatever can be delivered in 2 weeks to the customer, that's what you do, because then that will allow you to again deliver the value, however small, to the customer, so that you can get a quick feedback on whether it is right up to his expectations or not. That's what a sprint does. Okay. Going further, the burn down is the rate at which you are completing the tasks or the backlog under a sprint. So if you have listed 10 items to be completed in the sprint, uh, on a daily basis, you report a burn down chart. So initially you had 10, the next day you have 8, the next day you have 6, so on and so forth. So that's like a downward sloping graph, and that's why it's called a burn down chart. Okay, so a burn down chart refers to a total items pending on a daily basis or on a regular reporting basis. Okay. However, a burn up chart is the chart that shows the number of tasks that you have completed on a daily basis. So it's just flip. It's the other way around. Okay. So burn down and burn up. So these tasks are really good examples of how you report progress and how you can, kind of. So what I did in one of my projects was I had distributed the work across different project teams, and each of the team I would report a burn down chart. So what it helped me achieve is that now people were able to see the interrelations between each work stream, and then we were able to point out that okay, team one is not able to have a fast burn down, which is causing it to feed less items to the next team in the line, and that is why the burn down there is also slow, and that is why the overall velocity of the project is slow. So that's one of the bigger agenda, or to create that transparency among the team members, to create that accountability that this is what is needed here. Okay. uh, Next is a cross-functional team. So this is again a very misquoted or misused word here. I mean, generally, but what Agile says is that each team that you put together for a certain sprint, which is basically a certain set of features that you need to release as documented in the user story. Okay, so let me say that again. Agile says that each of your team should be self-organizing. Okay, meaning that they should be able to make their own decisions. Then they should be complete in their own sense, so that if it is a software development project, it should be a documentation specialist, a developer in Java, a developer in database programming, a UI designer, then a tester, and then a security tester, infosec tester, if ever, all of that. So all of this becomes one cross-functional team. There are other words that you would often hear, something like what's a tribe, what's a squad, so on and so forth. So a cross-functional team enables you to complete all the activities that are defined in a sprint. Now, and then eventually going back to what are the different features, or features of the software, features of the product that you have as defined in the user stories by the product owner. Okay, so that's how it goes. It flows through the whole process. And the most important aspect, or uh, the most crucial part in getting all of this done is to have something that Agile calls as a daily stand up, or basically a daily project update meeting that you have. Typically that meeting lasts for around 15 minutes, or should last for around 15 minutes, and should be attended by all the project team members. And that's what a daily meeting is. So it is a very important tool that is used by all the Agile practitioners. The specialization, or the specialty of this meeting or a daily stand up, is that it's not used for issue resolution. Okay, so if you have to solve certain problem, that's not the meeting that is to be looked upon. It's a status update meeting, that okay, I did this yesterday, I plan to do this today, these are the 4 or 5 things that I have dependencies on. So other team members, you need to feed me all of this so that I am able to complete my task. That's about it. So typically the duration lasts for around 15 minutes to 30 minutes. Shorter the better. And that's the whole philosophy of calling it as a stand-up meeting. So what we expect is that the status update should not take longer than you are able to actually stand up and then say that, hey, okay, I'm not tired enough, but the meeting really goes through. Okay, now all of this, there are a lot of moving parts in this. So what there are negotiations that happen with different stakeholders, such as the product owner, the developers, the team members, the person who documents the sprints, the person who manages the daily stand up, so on and so forth. All of it, the person who manages all of this show, so the director of all of this is the scrum master. So the scrum master should really be the one who makes those decisions, who drives those meetings, drives the right agenda, course corrects if they are going here and there, and then bring everyone back on what has been the real agreement, or what is the real thing that needs to be accomplished through each of the activity. Then there are different words to it. There is a coach, there is a scrum master, there is an agile coach. Every framework will have their own names to it. So don't get bogged down by that. The idea is that all of this management has to happen through a scrum master, or it's the role of the scrum master to have all of it done. Okay. Moving to the next part, in a typical software development life cycle, we have heard things. A traditional way of developing a software is really in a waterfall way. And when I say waterfall, we'll discuss what it is in the subsequent slides. But the context of agile, or the concept of agile, really says that you should deliver value in an incremental way and in an iterative development philosophy. Okay. So what it happens is, if you are saying you are delivering value in an incremental way, it would be like you deliver something which is bare minimum right now, or what we like to call the minimum viable product. Okay. So MVP becomes again a fad word in agile here. Iterative is basically you deliver something first, then you add feature, then you continue to refine that product one by one. Okay, so again, the whole underlying philosophy is that you are delivering value, or the real value, as I would like to call it, which is usable by the customer faster. So that's the agenda. Now, here's an example of an incremental or a refining philosophy. Okay, so the first part, what it goes is the bare minimum thing. You give out, like, probably if you look at it again from an automobile point of view, it could be like you give a pair of wheels which you can just tug along, and then say, hey, that's our mobility solution, so to say. Then you go about adding a motor to the two wheels, which is your next delivery. Then you go about managing all the bells and whistles around it, eventually making it as a complete solution there. So the idea is you build what you need right now, which is the MVP. Then you simplify it, you dumb it down, so that you are able to again uh, deliver faster to the clients, to your customers, and then whenever there is a need to improve on it, you keep on refining the solution that you have provided to the people or to your customers. On the other hand, an iterative or an additive way of delivering is where you, I mean, if you look at it, it's more or less similar. It's like you added one feature, you give a vanilla product first. Now, when I was trying to think of what example to cite, the silliest example that came to me, I don't know why, because I was watching this Tamil song. It came to me it was like, think of it like a skirt or a lungi, for that matter. So what you do is you deliver a simple plain white lungi. Okay. Then you add a silk border to it. Then you add a Velcro around the waist so it doesn't fall down. Then you add uh, the loops for the belt, so that you are sure that it stays where it should. And then you add, again, the next thing could be that you add pockets to a lungi. So right now, the most modern lungi that we get is something that you can just wrap around. You don't have to worry whether it will fall off or not. It has a belt to hold it there, and it also has a pocket where you can put in your cell phone and a wallet. So you started with a very, very vanilla product, and then you moved up and then got it to a level where your customer sees a lot of value in it now, from being a plain simple, cloth to wrap around yourself. So that's the kind of philosophy that Agile would have. Okay. This is another example. Again, this is something of a meme from Google, which typically talks about, waterfall design is you design everything first and then you start building it. But then what it sometimes could lead to is really a very faulty product at the end, because you never know what the requirements would be right at the beginning when you started. On the other hand, an agile is, you want to build a swing, so you start off by building a loop, then you put in something of a bare minimum, uh, a tire where it's like, you can just barely sit into it and be comfortable. But then you try different things also, you add a different feature. So can you try with three layers of a swing, because probably uh, some design guru sitting in a closed room thought that we could have three people swinging together, but then you realize quickly, no, it's not going to work. So your value is already seen that, okay, you tried this but you failed, and then you move to the next possible solution, where you put a nice heavy couch to the swing, and it becomes so uncomfortable that you can't just climb onto it, and eventually you decide that's not also a good feature, so you go back to being like a single layered swing that you have. And that's where a real value of, or the best value that a customer feels is delivered. Now, what is there to really look for, and then remember here, is that improvement at every subsequent release, improvement in your product, improvement in terms of efficiency, improvement in terms of effectiveness, in terms of feature, in terms of experience. That's what you keep on adding every now and then. And that's where this whole agile philosophy comes into the picture. Okay. Now, let's try to also put a, and we are all graduate students, or we were graduate students at some point, so we have been taught to think in terms of frameworks. And this is something that I could think of when we talk about how do you decide whether agile is for you or not. We have seen agile, and agile is typically looked upon as a very as a tool in software development. However, I have seen agile being implemented in HR. We designed the whole philosophy of HR process delivery through agile. There has been cases where we have, of course, used in software development. There are cases where we have talked to people about enterprise level agility. So what are the things, what's the culture, what's the process, what's the approval mechanism going to be like, and so on and so forth. And very recently, and of course, as the mother of all, agile philosophies are used to manage projects which are large and complex. So into a project management office kind of a situation. So there are two main axes which you should be looking at. One is how clear you are, or how certain you are that these requirements are absolutely there and they will not change over a course of time. No, so that's our x-axis, that we know that we are very, very certain that our requirements that we have gathered, they are not going to change, and they have been agreed upon by all the stakeholders as well. So we slightly move to the y-axis now, where we are saying that the requirements have been agreed upon with all the stakeholders, and the way in which we are delivering those features or requirements, those are not going to change. We are really certain that it's not going to change. So those are the two aspects that we look at. And the closer we are to the origin or the intersection of the two axes, we say that, okay, that's where we are very close to being in a agreement. But at the same time, we are also very certain that the technology required, or the tools that we are going to use to deliver these requirements, they are not going to change. And when we say that, that's where a traditional model of waterfall, where you document everything, your requirements are frozen, there is a sign off, and then you go about building it. So that's something that will happen in that kind of a situation. However, whenever you move a little extra further away on either of the axis, that's when the agile methodology will give you the most value, if ever. And uh, we don't we can't or I can't emphasize enough how much value the third axis, which is the people who bring into this project. Agile can get really, really clumsy if you haven't implemented it properly in your organization. But at the same time, it can be a very strong tool that you can use in case you want to change the way you work in your organization. Okay. So typically, again, to summarize, whenever there are possibilities that the requirements are not agreed upon and the stakeholders would change and the requirements would change, as well as whenever there is a kind of uncertainty on what type of solution is being used, will it change, like let's say you started building something with COBOL, then you move to C++, then you move to PHP and Java and functional programming languages, so on and so forth. So when those scenarios are existing in the ecosystem, then you would move rather with the agile philosophy. Okay. And I would strongly recommend a book called The Phoenix Project to anyone who wants to study this, or rather understand it better. It's it's something similar to the book that you might have heard of. It's called The Goal by Eliyahu Goldratt. So that was at some point earlier the Bible of operations and supply chain. But the Phoenix Project is authored by this guy called Gene Kim, and he's one of the biggest proponents of agile and DevOps in the world today. So that would give you a good idea on what to do here. Okay. uh, so I wanted to also put you or give you a view of how a typical traditional software development happens, and then we can tie it back to what I have been talking about in agile. So let's say you start from the right top or left top, where you approve of a project idea in your organization. It can be a software, it can be a product, it can be a service that you plan. Then after the plan is there, you sign it off. Then you do some analysis, you do some designing. It being a software example, it's coding, testing, and implementation. Okay. As you see on the bottom, what you see is while you're doing the planning to implementation run, the time is passing, and as the time moves forward, you're the ability of the team to handle uncertainty goes down. If let's take an example that if you find something that is not there in your product while you're testing it, so you're way ahead of your time, your start time, and then now you need to go back and say that, oh, okay, probably we did not analyze the requirements properly, or oh, okay, probably we did not architect the solution properly. And that causes a rigidity, a certain level of slowness in the whole manner of the project being delivered. And that's why one of the most common philosophies, or one of the most advocated philosophy that you would hear, is called the shift left philosophy. So all the feedback that you get should be more, should be coming in towards the left side of the curve, or left side of the axis. The sooner you get that feedback, the sooner you are able to complete the loop, circle back to the previous team. It would help you get the value or that you have been envisaging to be delivered through a project. Okay. So just to summarize, a typical traditional software development lifecycle, it's really a rigid, slow, certain, with a certain sense of certainty that it wants to move forward. And this whole philosophy is flipped by an agile way of working, where you're saying that no, you don't need to be very certain what you want. You just start with something that you have in mind right now, and then you slowly build on it in terms of the features, in terms of the expectations, and all the other bells and whistles. Okay. So that's what agile is all about. Okay. With that, yes.
You have 6 to 7 minutes to go.
Okay, sure. So what I would like to now bring you to is the construct of how agile can be implemented. And what I have done is to break down the agile way of or implementation of agile into 4 values that the agile manifesto recommends. So the first and the foremost value and the most important value is what agile says you should do is you should drive, or you should have individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Okay. So don't don't look at it as a replacement. So we are Agile does not say that you need to replace Agile, replace processes and tools by individuals and interactions, but at the same time you need to use more of individual interactions than processes and tools. Okay. And like I'll give you an example that we were brought in by a bank who was undergoing its core banking application change, and the biggest hurdle that we had was they had all being in that mindset of doing certain things in a certain way, that the inefficiencies of the processes and tools weren't very obvious to them. So when we came in, what we started doing was we started talking to each individual, understanding, oh, okay, what's the pain point that you have? There is a defect logging database, but then why don't you log it there? And then what will make you log defects in a more efficient way? Why can't we give access to everyone who is testing the product, so on and so forth? So our individuals, our interactions that we had with those individuals really helped us, again, dump down the processes and tools to a level that they can start using and see value in that. Now once they started seeing that, oh, okay, probably this is helping us with a certain set of accountability, certain set of visibility, with all the burn down charts and everything, then they started adopting it. And it's really we were very glad that by end of, I think, about the first few months, we were able to bring everyone back on the same processes and tools that they had initially. It was just that the bureaucratic wheel had to be broken down, and then that caused, that helped us see the value that was there. The next value that is really in the manifesto is that you should be focused more on delivering a working product over documenting it comprehensively and then not delivering anything. तो ऐसा कई बार we have seen this happen many times, that we want, like, a whole set of specifications, all the analysis done before you actually go about creating that product. One of my former bosses, and one of the statements that has really stuck with me as a professional, is that if there is a choice between a deadline and a perfect outcome, mind the deadline. You don't worry about a substandard product, you can always correct it. But then if you keep about perfecting it and not delivering it, the client will never see that, and it will eventually lead to probably broken trust, or missing trust that you have with the team. The next thing that is said in the value or the Agile manifesto is that you should look at collaboration over contract negotiation. uh, I can't, again, the best example to cite is actually one of my projects that I'm doing now. There was a certain, I mean, the vendor was trying to enforce a certain contract, and when we tried to bring it back to uh, the whole philosophy of collaboration, and understanding each stakeholder, understanding the philosophy of why this is happening, why is the customer acting the way they are acting, why is this stakeholder being a little pushy on a certain requirement, we were able to align with all the stakeholders. And the cost that was initially estimated at around $1.4 million, it came down to $150,000. And we just yesterday we were able to agree and sign off on that contract, that from, like, it was almost a drop of 90% price that we had based on the initial contract that was cited. Okay. The last value really is we should be coming in with an open mind. We should be able to respond to the change rather than following a certain path. And what happens typically is you start a project, and if you're a project manager, you have your sandbox really clearly defined, and you're like, okay, this is my time, this is my resources, this is my cost, and everything has to factor in this time. But then you, like, none of us had anticipated the COVID to come in, right? And then that really changed the way your plans are working. So now when we were initially looking at bringing a team of 10 consultants from Chennai, we are now looking at, okay, given this scenario, what can we do remotely? what are our services that can move to the cloud, or be postponed to the next phase, and then not worry about all of it right now and lose sleep on that. Okay, so those are the four values that really drive how you can bring that agile mindset into the team members that you are working with, and then try and practice it. It's not easy, but then the more you practice it, the more the better you get at it, right? Last couple of slides. So how do you continue from here? That was my idea of putting it here, that while we have talked about a lot of things, how can you continue? So first of all, understand that it is a journey. It can start, if it has started, or if you have heard of agile for the first time today, probably it's a good day, and the only way you can go is upward and forward from here. This is a typical Japanese phrase that is popular among the agile practitioners, shuhari. So what it says, that first of all you follow the rule, whatever is given, then you break the rule, bring in that innovation, and then you again revise the rule, recalibrate the rule, so that you can be better at what you were doing. The next thing is, I have included some resources. These are all free resources if someone would really want to learn. And the idea really is for all of us to stay strong in this VUCA situation, in this kind of the pandemic there. But at the same time, using our time as best as we can to learn new skills, and also keep up with that whole thing. I would be happy to have a more detailed discussion with anyone who wants to take it forward on specifically this topic. But yeah, so that's basically the idea, that you can pick it up from here, and then as and when you need, if you need any help, I'll be happy to help you out there. Okay, so that's the whole
Thanks.
idea I had. Yes, Nikhil,
Thanks,
this is my
Sandeep. You have been very agile and you have completed your talk in 40 minutes. So you have walked the talk. Thank you.
okay.
Now,
Okay.
anybody else who wants to raise your hand so that then we can, which is the normal thing. So anybody who has a question on this agile thing, yeah. Amrut Arore, go ahead.
Good evening, sir. I wanted to know if there is any certification like in Six Sigma, like Green Belt is there. Is there any certification in Agile from PMI
Yes,
or PMP?
yes, Amrut. So there are a lot of agencies which have their, or there are a lot of institutions which provide certifications. Of course, Project Management Professional (PMP) has one of certifications for Agile. Similarly, there is the most popular one is Scrum.org. So they are probably the most popular ones. If you would have time, if your last term will give you some extra time, I'll be happy to share the study material with you. It's not very difficult, but then it's also quite popular if you want to go into IT as a project manager or a product manager.
Anybody else with a question? Just one sec. Let me just check here. Yeah, anybody? Kindly raise your hand. The reason, Sandeep, we have done this is because otherwise it becomes a little, if everybody is unmuted and somebody's background come across.
It gets chaotic.
I think people are still escalating what you said.
I think one of the things that probably you could look at are if you just search, agile games, or agile teaching games. There are very interesting games that are there. One of few of them will really change the way we think about adopting a certain methodology, or project management methodology. So it really changed the perspective that you work with. And in all of this, one of my biggest observation has been the most missed aspect is really the change management part. If no matter what you're doing, if you're not managing the change that you are implementing, or that you are introducing to the
Can
system.
you hold the microphone near to you? I think
Sure. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, what I was saying was one of the most missed aspect of any project, in my view, is really the people management part or the change management part. Because a lot of times the change that you have introduced into the whole ecosystem can make or break the system. So that is extremely important, and agile kind of introduces that very early in the system, or very early in your project life cycle, that will help you drive that value again that we are looking at.
So that doesn't look like any question. I think so. It's a new concept. It's like, so, yeah, there is one gentleman. There are two now. First, G. Veer Mahendra, please go ahead. Mr. Veer.
One question. Agility generally is seen with the activity part, physical activity mostly.
Right.
The situation risks which can be perceived, who may be a calm person, but he'll be active at that. So is he a agile person? If he's able to find that this risk is coming, we should get ready. So normally what the agile people think is who is running around. So what is your view on that?
Um, it's a very interesting way you put it across. So usually when we see agile or when we hear agile, it is usually reference to being a motion or physical agility, of that person or of that activity. But if you look at agile as a project management methodology, it really is just that. You might be very cool and calm on the outside, but as long as you are able to drive these four values of, you can have a cool and calm discussion with someone, disregarding the or keeping the processes and tools aside, and say that, okay, I was able to achieve the result that I was wanting to through my interactions, but without so much of restriction of a process. So even if on the outside you're seeing that person as a cool and calm person, it can still refer to being agile. On the other hand, and so on and so forth on each of the value. So a cool person, who is a level-headed guy, can respond to change better than be fixated on a certain plan that has been put in place in the first place. So those are the areas that you could look at, think of when you look at agility in terms of a project management style.
I
Does
think
that help you understand?
one second. I saw one gentleman. Let me see. One second. Sushil, you wanted to ask a question?
I wanted to ask something because this is very interesting field and in fact is the IT sector and I don't have any kind of experience and knowledge, but I came to know certain words like he mentioned about that this kind of thing can be applied in during when we can find uncertainty, and he gave some examples of Mona Lisa, waterfall, and also mentioned about agile games. So
Yes.
when one question comes in my mind, that if it is possible and you can help me on that way, because like I read probability and I found a Bayes theorem somewhere in conditional probability. So
Mhm.
can we apply this agile technology or implementation of this kind of thing in certain games like roulette in a casino, where we can find the right number in the next game?
Mm, I think
Because
I
we
think
have the data, like we know the wheels and we know the data, like past 20 games data, and the wheel is slightly biased towards one sector. So we have all those kind of data. So can we apply this kind of agile technology kind of thing in the game of roulette in casino?
uh, see, what an agile approach would help you do is, let's say, uh, hmm, mm, it would help you identify what are your risks. Okay, so let's say you are playing a game of roulette in a casino, and you have brought in a, like, $100,000 with you to to be on the floor that day. What would agile teach you is that, first of all, it would tell you that, okay, you start your bets low. with a minimum viable win that you want. So you don't start by saying that, okay, I have brought in 100,000 and I'm going to go back home with $1 million. So it's like, okay, probably you should start by putting a bet of $100 on it. So that's the first iteration, so that you learn the game of roulette. Then you go about, okay, everybody is trying a certain this game in a certain way. Now I have identified the risk. Because you started slow, because you started low betting, you would have quicker feedback on whether your strategy has worked or not. So you loop back quickly to your original plan, that, hey, is this going to work or not? Are you going to distribute your bets across all the 16 numbers or all the 32 numbers? Are you going to have on the mid lines or on the corners? So all of that, you have tried different strategies, and what will work is, again, applying agile there. You could say, okay, this strategy was applied for the first time. My risks are identified. I got a feedback. I'm not going to win like this to the level that I want to. So I change my strategy now. In the next iteration, I go about with a different strategy. So the roulette game itself, the probability there, agile is not applicable immediately, but on the strategy that you're using to learn the game of roulette, that process can be controlled in an agile way.
Yeah, Thakur, go ahead.
Hi, Sandeep. Aditya from here.
Yeah, hi Aditya.
It was a very
Aditya,
nice
can you speak up a bit? I can't hear you clearly.
Sure. It was a very nice
I think
presentation.
there's a background noise behind.
I'm so sorry. I have written my question as well. I just want to ask if Sandeep can please throw some light on lean, the difference between the lean philosophy and agile philosophy.
Again, as I said, yeah, these are different frameworks that you use to apply the agile methodology. Lean is a principle that is applied in project management no matter what you do. So it all started with lean, but then there are different uh, frameworks that have come in place that have the underlying philosophy of lean or underlying philosophy of agile, and then change it, tweaked it here and there to serve the certain purpose that this particular industry would have or this type of projects would have. Example, and or rather the most popular one, is the Scrum framework that is there to apply agile. But then there are cases like Kanban. Kanban board, if you have to look at the easiest example and the most easily available, it's called Trello. So you can log into this Trello application. It's free. You can create your boards and you can create a whole workflow that you would have in case of how do you want to move about it. And then the easiest or rather the most used one is where you have three boards in a Kanban board, where you say this is my tasks or to do tasks, then these are my tasks that I am currently doing, and these are my completed tasks. So three boards. And then you say that, okay, this is the to do list that I have at the beginning of the week. This is my current task that I'm doing, and then these are the completed tasks. So what it helps you do is, rather than focusing on how much you want to do, it focuses on how much you have completed. So it's called focus on the pull of tasks getting completed. So there should be a maximum of 5 or 6 tasks in the doing board of a Kanban board. So those are the kind of examples or variants that you would see in the principles that are applied and then brought back to the whole agile way of working or lean principles of working. So you don't have to draw a very one-on-one comparison. It's just that some things work better in a certain manner and the other thing works in a different manner.
Liz, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, Sandeep.
Hi, please.
Is Agile suitable or designed for manufacturing, or it's more for, because I see Scrum or extreme programming and all?
In manufacturing also, Scrum or Agile can be used in terms of the product development philosophy. So once you have developed a design for the product, or what could happen, and this is an example that I was citing earlier. Let's say you want to build or manufacture a motorcycle, a Harley Davidson for that matter. if you start by the whole idea that my first product has to be Harley Davidson, then it will go through a lot of failures in that whole part, a whole journey. What Agile teaches us to do is, when you're trying to achieve achieve let's say Iron Bob 880, what you start off by is like probably the first cut is a simple two-wheeled with a engine. The next thing is you add all the fancy headlights and the fancy gadgets in that. Then the next step is you go about adding more features to that. And probably finally now we are seeing mopeds and scooters which have the IoT, and they connect with your mobile phone. So Agile will help in in a situation where you are in the design part. Once you have designed everything, then you hand it over to the Kanban way of doing things, where you're saying that, okay, now I am currently doing the chassis, then I'm doing the engine assembly, then I'm doing the accessory adding, and then finally I'm doing the Teflon coating. So that's how that's where I'm saying each of the principle will have its application in different phases of the life cycle.
Thanks.
Yeah.
We still have 4-5 minutes left. So if anybody has any question, you still have, or if you want to add something on a, you still have 4-5 minutes to go, but there are no more questions. So yeah,
I think if it would make easier, what I would like to just so whether or not you are completely adhering to that agile philosophy, there is a lot more that will follow in that. So and also just to assure you, agile has been applied not just in like the design that I was giving an example of, or in the software development industry, but we have really seen agile do wonders in a services industry, in the services industry also. So a classic case is compliance and internal audit. Agile has been applied and very, very well researched and documented on how to apply agile in terms of compliance driven industry or compliance driven services. Similarly, agile has been very popular in terms of product design, in terms of bringing the overall idea of how do you deliver certain thing. And one of the things that I was reading recently, nowadays they don't even call it a project management office. They are calling it a value realization office. So when you flip the way you think about the whole journey in terms of value realization, then you suddenly start seeing things differently. And that's where agile will make us a very a strong front runner to make sure that we are achieving what we started off with the aim of.
So Sandeep, thank you for a very nice, lucid presentation of Agile concept, and thanks for taking the time out. And
Sure, thank you everyone.
I just want to inform the alumni at large that Sandeep Waghmare is batch of MBA 2016. And there are many young alumni who have graduated, now participants here. That is a token of their appreciation for Sandeep, who has always lent a helping hand to the batches which are always studying at AIM, and has been an elder brother to them in counseling, or even now he has started a small mentorship group for those 17 guys who are come back from AIM because of this COVID thing. So Sandeep is really an ambassador of the Alumni Association and alumni at large. So I just wanted to bring home this point, because not many know about it. So I thought, let me take this opportunity to highlight this also. So thanks a lot, Sandeep.
Thank you,
Agile
Nikhil.
presentation,
Thank you for
and
your
keep
kind
going.
words.
God
Thank
bless
you,
you.
Nikhil. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.